Hi, I'm Andrika. Welcome to Tea Time.
So, when you pick up a book about the Psalms, you have a pretty specific vibe in mind, right?
Oh, absolutely. You're expecting something pastoral,
Hmm.
gentle poetry, maybe a nice picture of a field on the cover.
Something you read with a cup of chamomile tea when you need a little comfort.
Exactly. Very quiet, still waters.
But today, we are looking at a book that takes Psalm 91, which is, it's arguably the most famous prayer for protection in the Bible.
For sure.
And it basically turns it into a military field manual. The title alone is so aggressive. It's called Dwell or Die.
Yeah, that does not sound like your standard morning devotional. It sounds more like a survivalist handbook.
It really does.
Yeah.
And the subtitle is Psalm 91 for Modern Warriors. So we're diving into this text by a mother-daughter team, Patricia Augustus and Andrika Augustus Ruiz.
And honestly, just looking at their backgrounds, the intensity starts to make a lot of sense.
It really does. You can see why they wouldn't write some, fluffy book.
You have this fascinating mix. There's Patricia, the mother. She's an ordained minister, bringing all this academic rigor.
Right. She's the one digging into the Hebrew roots, the ancient context.
A really theological, almost structural perspective.
And then you have her daughter, Andrika.
Who is, and I love this detail, a biker.
Literally part of the Christian Motorcyclists Association out in New Mexico.
Which just brings a completely different energy to the table,
It does. It's this mix of deep, scholarly Hebrew study and then this gritty, rubber meets the road biker mentality.
Yeah.
They are not interested in poetry for poetry's sake.
No, they're arguing that Psalm 91 is a literal location.
A literal location.
That's the core premise. They frame it as a secret place, but they're very careful to say this isn't some metaphorical happy place.
Or a state of mind.
Right. They describe it as a war room, a strategy center. And that title, Dwell or Die, it presents this stark binary choice.
You either take up residence in the fortress or you stay exposed.
Exactly. And to make this really stick, they use this narrative device throughout the whole book, this character named Alexander.
I found him really effective. He's not just a generic stand-in. They really paint a picture of his situation.
He's basically the avatar for the reader.
Totally. We meet him in the woods. He's this young warrior, but he's just completely broken, exhausted, cold, terrified.
They describe the snapping twigs, the shadows,
Yeah.
all the sensory details of his fear.
He's been in a battle, and he's losing. He's just hiding behind a tree, trying to catch his breath, but he knows he's not safe.
And that image of Alexander shivering in the woods, that perfectly illustrates the problem they're trying to solve. He's surviving, just barely, but he isn't secure.
And his journey shows the difference between just visiting God when you're in trouble, like hiding behind that tree, and actually dwelling.
Okay, so let's unpack that word, dwell.
Yeah, because in modern English, it's a bit of a passive word. It means living somewhere, or, we use it psychologically, like, don't dwell on your mistakes.
Right, it has this static or even negative connotation for us.
Yeah.
But this is where the authors do this fantastic linguistic deep dive. They look at the Hebrew word from verse 1.
Yeshub.
Yeshub, and it carries so much more weight than just being there. It means to sit down, to remain, but also, and this is key, to take a position of authority.
Oh, interesting. So like a king sitting on a throne.
Exactly. Or a judge taking their seat at the bench.
Yeah.
It implies permanence and rule.
So it's the difference between, say, being a guest at my in-laws' house where I'm polite and I ask where things are,
Right.
and being in my own living room where I dwell. I own the space.
That is precisely the distinction. They argue that too many people treat God like an emergency room. You visit when you're hurt, get patched up, and then you leave.
But yashab, dwelling,
Hmm.
means you move in, you unpack, you sign the lease.
You don't leave. And you're moving into what the psalm calls the secret place.
And I've always heard that term and thought of it as, a hiding spot, a panic room.
Mm-hmm.
But Patricia, the mother, she breaks this down by the Hebrew letters, and it turns out it's much more of a structure.
It really is. The Hebrew word is seder. And she analyzes the root letters, Samek, Tav, and Resh. And instead of just giving definitions, she shows how they build something, like framing a house. First, you have Samek.
Which is a prop or a support.
So the foundation.
That's your foundation. Then you have tav, which is the mark of a covenant.
So that's like the legal deed to the property, the agreement that says you belong there.
Perfect. And finally, resh, which means head or highest authority. That's your roof. you're covering.
So when you put it all together, the secret place isn't a cave. It's a constructed space where you are supported by a foundation, secured by a contract, and covered by authority.
It's a system. And because it's a system, it has rules. You aren't just hiding, you're placing yourself under the command of that head.
This is where they bring in those specific names for God, right?
Yeah.
El Elyon and El Shaddai.
Yes. El Elyon, the Most High, which establishes rank. He outranks any threat.
And El Shaddai, the Almighty.
Right, but they know it's also associated with the stability of a mountain and, really interestingly, the nourishment of a mother. So you get supreme military rank combined with this absolute nurturing stability. Which brings us to the architecture of the place. And this is where Andrika, with her Texas background, uses an analogy that just makes it so concrete.
The Alamo.
The Alamo, yeah.
It's such a vivid illustration. She talks about it not just as a battle site, but as a fortress designed for endurance. It has the thick walls, the parapets.
But the detail that really got me was the internal storage, the logistics.
Yes.
She points out that the Alamo had its own well. It had beef cattle inside the walls. It had grain. It was self-sustaining.
And that's their critical point.
Yeah.
The protection of the Alamo was absolute, but it was conditional on your location.
If you were standing 10 feet outside the walls.
None of it mattered. The food, the thick walls, useless. You had been picked off immediately.
That's the dwell or die binary again. You can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out and expect the benefits.
The answers, the peace, the strategy, it's all stored inside the relationship.
Yeah.
You can't get to the pantry from the street.
Okay, so we've established the fortress. We're inside. But the book doesn't pretend the enemies just go away. It gets really specific about what's trying to get in.
Verse 3, the snare of the fowler and the pestilence that stalks in darkness.
And the tone here shifts from architectural to predatory.
It really
The
does.
snare of the fowler. I've read that 100 times and just glossed over it. But they described the fowler, a bird hunter, as someone who studies the prey.
That's the chilling part. A fowler is patient. He learns the bird's habits, what it eats, where it lands, what it's attracted to. The trap is custom made.
The enemy studies you. He sets a trap specifically for your weaknesses.
And then you have the stalker. And this is where Andrika shares a really heavy personal story from her time directing a pregnancy resource center.
Yeah, this part, it really illustrates what they mean by pestilence.
It's a very somber section. She talks about working with women who had abortions, sometimes decades in the past, and these women were functioning, jobs, families.
But she describes how the memory would return at night.
And she talks about these sensory triggers, the smell of the clinic, the sound of a vacuum.
And these things would just come back to haunt them 10, 20 years later when the lights went out.
And the authors identify that specific trauma, that regret, that waits for the quiet hours as the pestilence that stalks in darkness.
It's not a virus. It's a spiritual or an emotional stalking, the thing that waits for your defenses to be down.
And their argument is that this fear, whether it's trauma or anxiety, isn't just an emotion. They frame it as a spirit.
Right, from 2 Timothy, God has not given us a spirit of fear.
They distinguish between yer, which is a holy reverence, and pashad, which is just sheer terror.
And because it's a spirit, it's an illegal intruder in the fortress.
Exactly. So the command, you shall not be afraid,
Right.
becomes an act of alignment. You actually have the authority to evict that fear.
Okay, so we're in the fortress. The enemy is stalking us, setting traps.
Yeah,
We need backup.
we do. And this is where they get into angelic warfare.
And their version of angels is very different from the little chubby babies with wings and paintings.
Chuckles. Completely different. They look at verse 11. He shall give his angels charge over you. The Hebrew word they focus on is sava.
What does that mean?
It means to command or appoint, militarily. These aren't harps and clouds. This is special forces.
And this leads to that wild story from Andrika's own life, the man in scrubs.
Such a remarkable account.
Okay, so set the scene. It's 2006, a birthing center in Texas. She's in labor with her 4th son, and everything just stops.
The labor stalls, the fetal monitor goes silent, no movement, and the room just explodes into panic.
You can just feel the chaos. Doctors running in, nurses shouting, prepping for an emergency C-section. It's an absolute nightmare.
And in the middle of all this screaming and rushing, Andrika looks over to the corner of the room, and she sees a man in white scrubs.
And here's the detail that gave me chills. She said he was just sitting there.
Looking. Bored.
Bored. Everyone else is losing their minds. A life is on the line, and this guy is looking at his fingernails.
And she said, in that instant, she knew. That's not a doctor. A doctor will be panicking with everyone else.
Wow.
And that realization actually calmed her down. She thought, if this being, this angel, isn't panicked, then heaven isn't panicked. He was just standing guard on assignment.
The baby had a prolapsed cord, which is incredibly dangerous, but he was revived, and he survived.
And she uses that boredom as proof of his authority. He didn't need to panic because the situation was already secured.
Which reinforces their whole point that the secret place comes with its own security detail.
It's not, I hope God protects me. It's, I have a detail that has been pointed to this location.
But this is where the book makes a really critical pivot. Because up to this point, it all sounds very defensive. Hide in the bunker, lock the door.
Right. Let the angels handle it.
But then they shift to offense.
Yes. We get to verse 13. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra.
Alexander, our character, he doesn't just stay in the fortress forever.
No. And that's the modern warrior part of the subtitle. The secret place isn't a retirement home. It's a training ground. You go in broken, like Alexander, you get healed and equipped.
And then you go back out.
You open the gate, and you go back out to the fight.
They break down two very specific actions here, tread and trample.
Yeah, and the distinction is so important. The first word, tread the Hebrew, is darak. It means to march with purpose, like an army taking the field.
It's intentional movement.
Very. And then you have trample.
Which sounds much more violent.
It is. Kabosh. It means to subdue, to conquer, to crush completely. It implies the enemy is already under your feet.
So you walk with purpose and you crush the opposition. And they define that opposition as the lion and the cobra.
Which covers the whole spectrum of threats, really.
Yeah.
The lion is that open intimidation, the loud roaring, the thing in your face.
And the cobra is the hidden deceit, the thing that strikes from the grass.
And they argue that dwelling in the fortress gives you the authority to deal with both the loud attacks and the sneaky ones.
It's a partnership, though, right? You're not doing this alone.
Exactly. You're partnering with the angels. They clear the path, but you still have to walk it. Alexander has to leave the safety of the walls to retake the territory.
So we've got the fortress, the training, the battle. But what's the end game? What's the promise?
Verse 16. With long life, I will satisfy him.
And we usually read that as just quantity. You know, I hope I live to be 95. But they say that's a pretty shallow reading.
They do. They look at the Hebrew phrase chayai olam, and it implies a quality of life, or eternal life quality, that starts now.
So not just duration, but satisfaction.
Yes.
Yeah.
The word is sabea, to be full, to be satisfied. You can be 90 and empty, or you can be 40 and satisfied.
That's the difference between a long, miserable life and a life that feels complete.
Precisely. They even tie it to a redemption story about Andrika's brother, saying God can redeem time, restore the years that were lost outside the fortress.
So if we zoom all the way out, dwell or die, it's a harsh choice, but it's crystal clear.
That is the core message. There's no middle ground. You can't visit safety. You have to reside in it. It's all about position and alignment.
There was one final visual they used that I thought really captured the whole tension of the book.
So the pinions and the feathers.
Yeah. Verse 4 says, God covers us with his feathers. And I always pictured, you know, a soft down pillow. Very cozy.
Which is part of it. The feathers are that soft inner down for warmth and comfort. That's the nurturing side. But they point out the pinions.
The outer wings.
Right. The large, strong, stiff outer feathers that withstand the wind and deflect the rain. They're a shield.
So you get both. He's the hard, protective shield against the enemy.
And the soft, comforting warmth for you. The warrior and the nurturer. The Alamo walls and the warm meal inside.
That really sums it up. So what does this all mean for us today? The authors ask a pretty provocative question at the end that I think is worth leaving everyone with.
They ask you to look at your own home, not just the physical building with the doorbell camera and the deadbolt.
Right. They ask, is your home established as a spiritual city of refuge?
It's a heavy question. Is your home just a place where you sleep and watch TV? Or have you done the spiritual work to make it a fortress where, as the verse says, no plague comes near?
It challenges you to stop treating Psalm 91 like a superstition, like a rabbit's foot, and start treating it like a lease agreement.
Move in. Sit down. Take authority.
Dwell or die. It's an intense read, but it definitely shakes the dust off a very familiar chapter.
Absolutely. Makes you check your locks, both the physical and the spiritual ones.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope this sparks some new thoughts on what it really means to dwell.
Keep digging.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.